Welcome to week 7 here at MPAI 600, Georgetown University's Applied Intelligence Program. As I've said previously, you're in the home stretch of this course anyway, as well as which I presume is your first course here at Georgetown. So just have to knock out this last paper as well as the final, and we'll be wrapping this course up. So I want to start off with announcements. So the Zoom session, as I mentioned earlier, is going to be this Wednesday at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And I want you to acknowledge that you viewed this YouTube video, but in that acknowledgement, I want you to acknowledge that you know the change in time for the Zoom session, as well as if you can attend. I want to talk about jobs, working in the federal government, working for defense contractors in that session. And I want to talk about opening it up to questions on the paper and the final as well. So, we'll last maybe an hour. 30 minutes will be a job talk, and then the rest of the 30 minutes will be on general course material. So if you can't make it, if you can make it, let me know. If you can't, but you really wanted to, you would schedule something for Thursday or something like that, let me know as well, and I could try and coordinate something separately with you as well. So final paper is due, or paper 3, I should say, is due 22 October. The final is due 24 October. So you got a busy week in front of you, and that's going to get released right now on 17 October. So you have a week to do it. It's take-home final. It's based on a lot of the themes of the course so far, or the themes of this course. And if you have any questions or issues on that, again, please let me know as well. And then finally, the course evaluations. Please do the course evaluations. You should have them in your inbox by now. This is the first iteration of this course. This is the first course in the iteration of this program. And we want to get better for future students. But there's a very good chance that you'll be in a class I'll teach later on down the road. And if you like this course, say it. And if you liked me, enroll in that course. And if there's something you didn't like, whether it was the readings or something about the online information technology, please let us know as well so we can fix that. So if you're in my class or in this course in the future, that can be fixed. So please do the course evaluations. I take them very seriously, and everyone in the administration takes them very seriously. So again, please take some time for that. So current events. Harvey Weinstein. Unless you've been living under a rock, you probably have heard about this. He was a Hollywood mogul type, and apparently he was engaged in some lurid activity in exchange for young women who wanted to break into the acting or Hollywood world. Why am I talking about essentially sexual assault in a course about applied intelligence? So it's not essentially about sexual harassment, sexual assault. It's about power and dynamic differentials and people who not only, it wasn't just Harvey Weinstein and these young women. It was a whole apparatus of corrupt culture that allowed this to happen. Whether it was in his immediate employment or even further his employees that facilitated all of this. And the reason I bring this up is we've talked about politicization in the abstract, in history, in Iraq and Yom Kippur War, and it's very easy to look back in history. But I think when rubber meets the road, when there's issues of power, and that's what we're all trying to do. When you're briefing in intelligence, you're briefing higher. You want access. You don't want to upset your boss. You want to try and make things pleasing to him. And that's the very nature where politicization comes in. This is one of those issues where your integrity, because you're only giving information in the intelligence business, so your integrity is the most important thing, and the non. You don't want to undermine the data and the analysis you do to curry favor with your superiors. So yes, Harvey Weinstein is Hollywood, and it's sex, and it's probably things that I doubt many people will deal with in this course. But those same issues, those underlying corruptible issues, and those issues of human fallacy, we'll just say that, are relevant when you're talking about intel and integrity and briefing intel and organizational culture. So when you see one of these scandals, again, the salacious parts are the ones that always get the headlines, but it's the underlying organizational issues and lack of integrity that explain it. And again, you can easily explain away that Harvey Weinstein's a pervert and something like that. But again, there was organizational issues that allowed him to do what he's been doing for 30 years and essentially get away with it. So I ask that when you're thinking about careers, you're thinking about working in the intelligence community or the defense community. Obviously, again, we're not talking about the salacious stuff here, but we're talking about integrity and organization and how to make your analysis clear. And that's kind of all I'll say about that. So week 7, paper 2, just some quick issues. So you all have your papers marked. And the issues that I saw. Far too many grammatical spelling issues. Proofread. Can't proofread your work. Show it to your friend, your girlfriend, boyfriend, friend, someone that's close to you, your parents, coworkers. You can't proofread your work. Okay? You can't proofread your own work because there are errors that other people will pick up that you can't. So grammatical spelling errors. Use the Writing Center. That's why it's there for. And again, I didn't even correct all of them because occasionally it was getting so bad that it just, for a couple of you, that I had to just kind of, you got the point for when I marked up the first paragraph. So again, way too many of those issues. Passive voice. Okay? I don't mean to go into your high school English teacher here, but the boy kicked the ball is an active sentence. Subject, predicate, direct object. The ball was kicked by the boy is passive voice. Okay? Because the direct object, the verb, and the subject of the sentence are in the wrong order. Many people do not know. You hear this active voice, passive voice, and I can guarantee you a lot of people don't know the difference. And the top is much easier to read than the bottom. I recommend that you go through that drill in your writing. That you go through, label it right when you're proofreading it. This is subject, this is a verb, this is a direct object. And then every time you see it out of that order, that's passive voice, and ask the question, can I make this sentence active? No laundry lists. Again, this was a huge issue. You can give me 5 reasons why the Pearl Harbor intel failure occurred or the Iraq WMD failure occurred. I don't want those laundry lists. I would rather you focus on 1 or 2 issues that you think had the most extreme or had the most cascading effect for the intel failure. You can write a 1,200 to 1,500 paper on the uses and misuses of imagery intelligence relating to Iraq WMD. That is a focus paper. The problem that I saw too many for the Iraq WMD issue is here are 10 things that went wrong with Iraq WMD. That makes your paper sound very facile and very limited. You want to focus your paper on 1 or 2 issues and go in depth. And that was a big issue I saw in a lot of the papers. And then you have to show me. You can't just say, again, 9/11 was a result of interagency miscommunication. You have to be specific and show me where that interagency miscommunication happened and how that led to the intel failure. Again, pretend like you're writing these papers that you're blaming somebody, which you should be doing because that's you're assessing failure in these papers. But you're blaming someone. That guy is going to come back to you and really argue your point. So make sure your analysis is strengthened. Don't just say, we failed to talk to each other, or the Iraq WMD is the result of just politicization, and leave it at that. Get down to the brass tacks and show me where the errors in communication or how the politicization winded itself through specific analytical failure lines. That's the specificity I'm looking for in the next paper as well as in your final. Okay, so previous weeks, I say previous week's review because there are some issues on week 5 I want to circle back to that's going to be relevant to your final. So I want to make sure that you're aware of it. Lone wolves. We talked about in the discussion section lone wolves. A lot of you didn't address this, and some you will have to do that, is the gap between indicators versus arrestable activity. Again, a lot of you said, hey, we need to make sure we have good human, that we monitor them using comments, so we make sure they're not doing any, we monitor their web or internet activity, so we can get indicators of potential radicalization. All that is great, but you still have to there's still that gap between what's arrestable and what is not. So I can search on jihadist websites all I want, all day. As a free country, I get to do that. Is that what can I do to stop that? And a lot of people brought this up. I think you can, it's good, you just have to be more clear, is, okay, we have to solve, if we can't arrest them, we got to make sure that hazardous material, and again, that's a euphemism essentially for guns, don't fall into the hands of people who show indicators of radicalization. And you'll have to elaborate on that if you want to talk lone wolves, or how to solve this lone wolf homegrown extremism problem. Just some things on week 6. CompStat, was it a decisive factor? I think we split 50-50 on this. I'm still grading, or still going through your papers or your comments now. And many people agreed that it was a focusing factor or accountability tool for police authorities. Not all police at the time could measure decreasing criminal activity by precinct and by district and by city. And this allowed you to focus it. However, again, this goes back to perverse incentives and corrupt culture. There were plenty of reports of altering reports or not deciding what a crime is, and not trying to arrest people because you know that you're incentivized to keep crime down. In Iraq, people did this too, where direct action or enemy activity was brought down because of people didn't want that, or commanders didn't want that increase in extrajudicial killings or anything like that in their reports. So people tend to look the other way. That happened more often. So you have perverse incentives. The other problem with CompStat is sometimes where the gang or where the criminal activity lives isn't necessarily where the criminal activity is. When you have gangs that cross borders, sometimes MS-13, where they live, sometimes the criminal activity is outside of where the MS-13 headquarters are. So the commander who has no incentive to go after them because they're not creating criminal activity. So, incentives matter on CompStat. You saw that in some of the readings. And then I just bring up, again, a lot of you thought that CompStat had a factor in the decline in crime that we saw for 30 years. But you have to test that theory against other variables. Was there an economy that caused the decline in crime, the greater economy? Was it demographics, the baby booms aging, the crack epidemic? Was it just a return to normal? For example, crime spiked up in the 70s and 80s and then went down, but maybe it was just a return to mean, that it was just a normal criminal activity that we've seen for the better part of a century. That is something to consider when, if you say CompStat is the end-all, be-all genius thing that stopped crime. And there's a lot of consultants and things like that believe in CompStat because their consulting fee is based on CompStat and its success. But just something to think of. And then the Boston Marathon documentary, all those technology tools, and there are plenty of courses that will go in depth in this program about Homeland Security technologies. This was just to introduce you to some of the criminal investigatory technologies. But I'll ask the question, a lot of you put a lot of faith in CCTV, forensics, but is this more a post-incident investigative tool, or does it actually prevent crime, particularly CCTV? Because a lot of cities have invested a lot of money in CCTV with the hope of using it as a crime deterrent. But it is, well, I'll let you decide if that is a worthy, whether it's CCTV or other technologies, are worthy criminal intelligence solutions, are they investigative solutions, that type of nature. So those are just, again, some issues we saw in week 5 and week 6. So week 7, we're kind of shifting a little bit in week 7 to business intelligence. And I don't see anybody who's in the business intelligence track in this class. But I do think the lessons that you see in the business intelligence world is applicable, especially the short lessons that you see, is applicable to law enforcement or strategic analysis or homeland security. You're going to get a definition of what business intelligence is, and there's a 30-minute requirement to watch the interview that I did with Dr. Gilad, who's really the founder of business intelligence, how to provide intelligence so businesses get a competitive advantage in the marketplace. And I think, again, you can learn a lot just by looking at, again, how businesses operate. But when you're thinking about your thought patterns, the question is, okay, why do certain businesses succeed and others fail, even though they're selling the same product? You probably don't see many Circuit Cities around. Best Buy beat Circuit City. Why? They essentially sell the same thing, consumer electronics. Why did Best Buy beat Circuit City? I live in D.C. CVS certainly beat Walgreens. Why? What were the variables that allowed CVS, essentially the same product and the same supply chains, beat out Walgreens? And that's the question to ask as you're going through the readings and the topics for this week. And then look at, again, applications to national security issues. There's a couple of questions that are brought up in the interview. A couple of your readings talk about social media and how businesses use social media, and certainly the government or government information apparatus can look at social media and see its applicability. So those are the issues I have for week 7. Again, I ask you that you, if you can make it on Wednesday, please let me know as soon as possible. And if you can, great. If you can't and you want to do it, let me know as well, and we can try and arrange something over the weekend as well. And I apologize. I had to move it up to Wednesday because of a work issue, emergency work issue that's going to keep me late on Thursday night.